A waitress is invisible. She pours $500 wine, clears $100 plates, and survives on the polite ignorance of the 1%. But Alice Hayes had a secret. At table 12 sat Khalid al-Jamil, the Arabic billionaire, a man so powerful and intimidating no one dared speak to him. His staff spoke a language no one in the restaurant understood, and his frustrations were legendary. But Alice understood every word, and tonight she heard the one word that would change everything: betrayal. The Obsidian was a temple of glass and steel, built on the bones of old money. Its home in Midtown Manhattan meant it catered to a clientele that didn't just have wealth. They were wealth. They were the hedge fund titans, the real estate moguls, and the tech gods who moved markets before their appetizers arrived. And then there was Alice Hayes. At 26, Alice was a ghost in this machine. Her uniform, a stark black dress, crisp white apron, was designed for invisibility. She moved with a practiced, silent efficiency, her feet throbbing in theoretical comfort shoes after 7 hours on the marble floor. She was serving a $250 cut of Japanese Wagyu to a man complaining about cell service, her mind thousands of miles away. Alice's mind wasn't on tips, though she desperately needed them. Her mind was on the eviction notice tucked inside her locker and the yellowed, dog-eared copy of a dissertation on pre-Islamic poetry sitting on her nightstand. She held a master's degree in Semitic languages and Middle Eastern studies from Columbia. Her father, the late and brilliant Dr. Richard Hayes, had been a celebrated archaeologist. Alice had spent her childhood not in playgrounds, but in the sun-baked landscapes of Jordan, scrambling over ruins in Petra, her first language almost becoming the local Arabic dialect she picked up from the Bedouin guides. Her father's sudden illness and the mountain of medical debt that followed had vaporized her PhD ambitions. Now she translated wine pairings instead of ancient texts. "Hayes! Table 15! Chop, chop!" Alice snapped to attention. The voice belonged to Gregory Henderson, the restaurant's manager. Henderson was a short, fussy man who treated the staff like faulty equipment and the clientele like visiting royalty. "Table 15, Alice whispered, her blood running cold. "Mr. Henderson, isn't that—" "Yes, it is," Henderson hissed, adjusting his silk tie. "Mr. Al-Jamil. His usual waitress called in sick. Food poisoning, she claims. Lucky her. Look, Hayes, just... Don't be weird. Don't try to engage. Water, bread, take the order, and get out. He's with his cousin, Mr. Nasser. Let them talk. Don't interrupt. And for God's sake, don't stare." Alice nodded, her heart hammering. Table 15 was legendary among the staff. It was the problem table, the silent table, the billionaire's fortress, Mr. Khalid al-Jamil. He was a myth in the New York financial world, an Emirati mogul who had built an empire in tech, logistics, and sustainable energy. He was colossally wealthy and famously private. He came to the Obsidian 3 times a week, always sat at table 15 in the most private alcove, and always spoke exclusively to his associates in Arabic. The staff found him terrifying. He never made eye contact. He never smiled. He would gesture curtly for water or snap his fingers, a sound that made Henderson jump. Other waitresses said he was rude, arrogant, and unintelligible. Alice grabbed her silver tray and 2 leather-bound menus. She smoothed her apron, took a deep breath, and walked toward the alcove. The energy at table 15 was visibly different from the rest of the restaurant. It was a bubble of pure, crackling tension. Khalid al-Jamil was a man in his mid-40s with a severe, handsome face, dark eyes, and a palpable aura of command. He wore an impeccably tailored dark suit, but no tie, as if he'd come straight from a war room. He was not speaking. He was staring at a tablet, his brow furrowed. Beside him sat his cousin, Nasser al-Jamil. Nasser was younger, smoother, with a practiced, easy smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was the one who spoke English, placing their orders with a dismissive wave. Alice approached. "Good evening, gentlemen. May I offer you—" Khalid didn't even look up. He said something sharp and low in Arabic to Nasser. Alice froze. The dialect was clear, precise, Gulf Arabic. Nasser looked up at Alice, his smile thin. "Just water. Still. 2 bottles. And the bread basket." He dismissed her with a nod. Alice retreated. But something had shifted inside her. The harsh, unintelligible language the other servers complained about. To her, it was the sound of her childhood. It was the sound of her father explaining a Nabatean inscription, the sound of the Ammon markets at dawn. She returned with the water and bread. As she poured the $15 aqua panna, the men began to talk. They kept their voices low, but the acoustics of the alcove, designed to keep noise out, inadvertently trapped their conversation in. And Alice Hayes understood every single word. She pretended to adjust the salt and pepper, her movements slow, her ears straining. "It is not a matter of price, Nasser." Khalid's voice was a low growl, strained with frustration. He was speaking of the tablet. "It is a matter of trust. The New York partners are stalling. Why?" "Khalid, they are Americans," Nasser replied, his tone placating, almost condescending. "They smell money. They circle. It is their way. I told you, this deal is too complicated. This Helios project. It was Ahmed's dream, not yours. Let it go." Alice's hand paused on the water bottle. Ahmed's dream. Khalid's head snapped up, his dark eyes fixing on a point just past Alice's shoulder. The pain in his voice was raw when he replied, "It was my brother's legacy. I will not let it go, just because these wolves are playing games. Find out who is advising them. Find out who they met with yesterday." "I have tried," Nasser said. "They are discreet." "Then be more discreet," Khalid snapped. "This entire trip is a waste if we cannot secure this. Billions are on the line, Nasser. Billions!" Alice finished pouring and backed away, her mind reeling. The formidable, rude billionaire wasn't rude. He was grieving. He was fighting. And, she suspected, he was being poorly served by the one man he was supposed to trust. For the next hour, Alice orbited the table like a nervous satellite. She delivered a simple grilled sea bass for Khalid and a complex filet mignon for Nasser, all ordered by Nasser. Khalid ate little, his focus entirely on the encrypted tablet in front of him. The tension at the table grew with every passing minute, becoming a tangible, bitter thing. Gregory Henderson lurked by the service station, polishing a glass that was already immaculate, his eyes darting to table 15. He shot Alice a look that said, "Don't mess up." Alice's friend and fellow waitress, Sophie Chen, brushed past her on the way to the kitchen. "How's the lion's den?" she whispered. "Tense," Alice whispered back. "He's not what they say, Sophie. He's stressed." "Stressed, rich, rude. It's all the same to me," Sophie muttered, vanishing through the swinging doors. Alice returned to the alcove to clear the plates. Nasser was on his phone, speaking in low, rapid English, his back to Khalid. Khalid himself was rubbing the bridge of his nose, his eyes closed. He looked exhausted. Nasser hung up and slipped the phone into his pocket. He turned back to Khalid, his expression a perfect mask of regret. And he began to speak in Arabic. "That was them," Nasser said, "the partners from the Helios project." Khalid's eyes snapped open, suddenly alert, all exhaustion vanishing. "And? What did they say? Did they agree to the meeting tomorrow?" Nasser sighed, spreading his hands. "Khalid, I'm afraid I have bad news. They are backing out. Khalid's face went rigid. Backing out? What do you mean, backing out? We had an agreement in principle. They said the terms are no longer favorable, Nasser said, shaking his head sadly. They said they have received a more substantial offer from another party. They wouldn't say who. They apologized, but the deal is dead. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Alice, standing just 2 feet away with a stack of plates, felt the blood drain from her face. It was a lie. A complete, total, bald-faced lie. Nasser's phone call had been in English, and Alice, accustomed to the restaurant's din, had heard parts of it clearly. The call hadn't been from the partners, it had been to them. Or rather, to their assistant. Nasser hadn't been receiving news, he had been postponing a meeting. She had clearly heard him say, "No, Mr. Al-Jamil is indisposed. We will have to reschedule the 10 a.m. We'll reach out when we are settled." He wasn't reporting the deal was dead. He was killing it himself. Khalid Al-Jamil's face, which had been a mask of stone, seemed to crumble. The loss and fury that rolled off him was staggering. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He placed his hands flat on the table, leaned forward, and said in a voice that was terrifyingly quiet, "They are backing out? I am so sorry, cousin," Nasser said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "I did everything I could." Liar. The word screamed in Alice's head. Khalid snatched his arm away from Nasser's touch. He looked betrayed. He looked broken. This wasn't about money. This was about his brother. "Get Henderson," Khalid said, his voice flat. "Get me the check. We are leaving." Nasser nodded and signaled for the manager. Henderson was at the table in seconds, his face stretched in a painful, obsequious smile. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Al-Jamil?" Henderson beamed. Khalid Al-Jamil looked at Henderson with dead eyes. He said nothing. He simply stood up, his chair scraping loudly on the marble floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet restaurant. He then turned to Nasser, and the venom in his voice was palpable, even if Henderson couldn't understand the words. "This is a catastrophe. You assured me this would work. You assured me, my brother's name, ruined by these New York thieves." "There was nothing to be done," Nasser insisted, also standing. "It is finished." "Sir?" Henderson chirped, his smile faltering. Is there a problem with the food? The service?" Khalid glared at the manager, a man he didn't see. A buzzing insect. He was about to storm out, to leave his entire legacy in the hands of the traitor beside him. Alice's heart was a drum against her ribs. This was not her business. Her job was to clear plates. Her job was to be invisible. If she spoke, she would be fired. Instantly. She would lose the one thing standing between her and the eviction notice. "Don't be weird. Don't engage. Get out." Henderson's words. But then she saw the look on Khalid's face. It wasn't the look of a billionaire. It was the look of her father, months before he died, when the doctors told him the treatment had failed. It was a look of utter, devastating defeat. "He's lying to you." She took one step forward. The plates in her hand rattled. "Alice, the check," Henderson hissed at her. She looked past Henderson. She looked past the stunned Nasser. She looked directly into the eyes of Khalid Al-Jamil, and she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a razor. It was clear, unwavering, and in perfect academic English. "He's lying." The entire alcove froze. It was as if someone had pressed a cosmic pause button. Henderson's sycophantic smile dissolved into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Nasser Al-Jamil, who had been positioning himself as the grieving advisor, physically recoiled, his face flashing from shock to outrage to a sudden, cold fear. But it was Khalid al-Jamil who had the most profound reaction. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. He simply tilted his head, his dark, piercing eyes narrowing on Alice. He stared at her as if he had never truly seen her, or any server before in his life. He was seeing her now. What did you say? Henderson stammered, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. Hayes! Apologize to Mr. Al-Jamil immediately, and get to my office. You are fired! Alice ignored him. Her entire world had contracted to the 3-foot space between her and the billionaire. Her hands were shaking so badly the plates clattered. She set them down on an adjacent empty table before she dropped them. I said, Alice repeated, her voice stronger now. He is lying to you. Nasser stepped forward, his face a mask of fury. How dare you? You insolent girl! What do you know of our business? Khalid, let us leave this insulting establishment. I will have her fired. I will have this place shut down. He reached for Khalid's arm. Khalid, without looking away from Alice, raised a hand, and Nasser stopped dead. Khalid al-Jamil's gaze was analytical. He was processing an impossible new piece of data. You understood us, he said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, spoken in his precise, accented English. Yes, sir, Alice said, her heart hammering. I understood every word. Henderson looked like he was going to be physically ill. Mr. Al-Jamil, please, I am so sorry. She is delusional. She's a new employee, clearly unstable. Be quiet, Gregory, Khalid said. He had never used Henderson's name before. The manager's mouth snapped shut with an audible click. Khalid's eyes were still locked on Alice. The air crackled. You speak Arabic, he stated. Yes, sir, since I was a child. She's lying, Nasser burst out, his voice a little too high. She's an American. Look at her. She's trying to extort you. This is a setup. Khalid ignored him. He was studying Alice, and she felt as if she were under an electron microscope. He was a man who diagnosed problems and solved them. He was diagnosing her. Then he tested her. He spoke in Arabic. It wasn't the conversational Gulf dialect he'd been using with Nasser. This was Fusha, modern standard Arabic, the high-minded language of news, law, and academia, and the sentence he used was a complex, idiomatic proverb. The camel does not see its own hunchback, he said, his voice a low rumble. He was waiting. He expected her to have picked up a few phrases from a college boyfriend, or perhaps a language app. He expected her to fail. Alice met his gaze without flinching. She replied instantly, not in Arabic, but in English, translating the meaning, not just the words. It means, she said clearly, that a person can see the faults in others, but is blind to their own. You think you are the one being deceived by the partners. You don't see the deception standing right next to you. Nasser al-Jamil went pale as a sheet. Khalid al-Jamil's expression did not change, but a new, dangerous light flickered in his eyes. He had his answer. Nasser, Khalid said, his voice dropping an octave. Wait for me in the car. Khalid, cousin, listen to me, Nasser pleaded, switching to Arabic, his voice desperate. This is absurd. You're going to listen to a waitress? She's nobody. She's serving fish. This is a trick by our rivals, by Marcus Thorne. The name Marcus Thorne hung in the air. Alice filed it away. Khalid turned his head slowly to face his cousin. The power that rolled off him was immense. When he spoke again, it was in Arabic, and it was not a request. I told you, wait, in the car. Nasser's face contorted in rage. He looked at Alice with a hatred so pure it was stunning. He adjusted his suit, shot a venomous glare at his cousin, and then stormed out of the restaurant, deliberately shoving a chair out of his way. The alcove fell into a stunned silence. It was just Alice, the billionaire, and the terrified, quivering form of Gregory Henderson. Khalid gestured to the empty chair his cousin had just vacated. "Sit down, Ms. Hayes," Alice whispered, her knees weak. Alice Hayes. "Sit down, Miss Hayes," he said. "Sir, she's an employee. She cannot—" Henderson began. "She is, as of this moment," Khalid said, pulling out the chair for her. "My guest." Alice, in her stained apron and throbbing shoes, slowly sat down at the table. She was sitting opposite a man whose net worth was larger than the GDP of several small countries. Khalid sat back down and folded his hands. He looked at her, truly looked at her, for a long, quiet minute. "Start from the beginning," he said, "and do not leave out a single word." Alice sat on the plush velvet seat, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap, her knuckles were white. Her mind was a whirlwind. Fired, eviction, billionaire, liar. The words spun in a dizzying circle. "Miss Hayes," Khalid said, his voice softer now, but still demanding. "You said he was lying." Alice took a shaky breath. "His phone call, the one he took just before he spoke to you. It was in English." "I did not know he was speaking English," Khalid murmured, a shadow crossing his face. "I assumed he was speaking to the partner's representative." "He was," Alice said, "but he wasn't receiving news. He was giving it. I heard him clearly. He said, 'Mr. Al-Jamil is indisposed. We will have to reschedule the 10 a.m. We'll reach out when we are settled.' He cancelled the meeting, sir. The one you were waiting for." Khalid's face became a mask of cold, controlled fury. He didn't explode. He just absorbed the information, and in his stillness, Alice saw the true depth of his power. He was a man processing a betrayal that was clearly both personal and professional. "He told me," Khalid said quietly, "the deal was dead, that they had gone with another." "He lied," Alice affirmed. "The deal isn't dead. He just postponed the meeting you were supposed to have." Khalid leaned back, his eyes distant. "For 10 years he has been my right hand. My father's brother's son. My blood." He refocused on Alice, his gaze sharp as a surgeon's. "Now why do you speak my language? Not just speak it. You understand the Fusha. You understood the proverb. You are not a student. You are not this." He gestured vaguely at her uniform, not with disdain, but with confusion. And so, Alice told him. She told him about her father, Dr. Richard Hayes, and his obsession with Nabatean water harvesting systems. She told him about her childhood in Amman, about learning to read and write Arabic before she was fluent in cursive English. She told him about the summers spent on digs near Petra, sitting with the Bedouin elders, sharing sweet tea and listening to stories, her ear attuning to the nuances of a dozen different dialects. She told him about Colombia, about her thesis, about her dream of continuing her father's work and creating a digital archive of at-risk archaeological sites in the Levant. And then she told him about the cancer, the sudden, brutal illness that had taken her brilliant father. She told him about the experimental treatments, the bills from Sloan Kettering that piled up like snowdrifts, the insurance that covered barely a fraction. She told him about selling her father's apartment, then his library, book by book, just to keep the collectors at bay. "My PhD fund was the last to go," she said, her voice quiet, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "I've been working here for 8 months. I have a degree in Middle Eastern studies, and I'm 2 days from being evicted." She hadn't meant to say that last part. It just slipped out. Gregory Henderson, who had been standing frozen this whole time, let out a small, strangled squeak. Khalid al-Jamil listened to her entire story without a single interruption. His expression was unreadable. He was a man who lived in a world of sharks, of corporate raiders and shifting alliances. He was, she realized, a man who had to decide in an instant if this was the most elaborate corporate espionage setup he had ever encountered, or if it was the simple, heartbreaking truth. When she finished, the silence in the alcove was absolute. "Dr. Richard Hayes," Khalid said finally, his voice thoughtful. I have heard that name. He wrote The Stones of Water. My brother, Ahmed, he admired his work." Alice's head shot up. Tears pricked her eyes. He did? "My brother was a historian before he was an engineer," Khalid said. "The Helios project. This clean energy deal, it was his passion. He believed New York could be a model for the world, using technology inspired by ancient principles of sustainability, like your father's water harvesting." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the myth. She saw the grieving brother, the weary executive, the man utterly alone in a city of millions, surrounded by vipers. "Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice firm, "you are, as your manager so helpfully pointed out, fired." Alice's stomach dropped. Of course, it was all for nothing. "From this establishment," Khalid continued, a ghost of a smile touching his lips, "because I am hiring you, as of this second." Alice blinked. I don't understand. "I am offering you a job, as my personal translator and consultant, my liaison. You will work for me, directly. Your salary will be, let's say, triple what you are making here. No," he glanced at Henderson, 5 times what you are making here. And you will start right now." "Now?" Alice stammered. "Now?" He stood up. He pulled out his wallet, a slim, black alligator skin case, and removed a stack of $100 bills. He placed 10 of them on the table. "For the meal." Then he handed another 5 to Alice. "For your time." I can't accept this," Alice said, looking at the $500. "It is not a tip, Miss Hayes. It is your first retainer." He turned to Henderson. "Have her belongings brought to the front. Immediately. She will be leaving with me." Henderson, finally seeing the new power dynamic, snapped to attention. "Yes, Mr. Al-Jamil. Right away, Mr. Al-Jamil." He scurried away, shouting, "Sophie, get Hayes's locker cleared." Khalid held out his arm. "Alice. May I call you Alice? My car is waiting. We have work to do." Alice looked at the money. She looked at the billionaire. She looked at the restaurant she had hated for 8 long months. She unfastened the strings of her apron, the symbol of her invisibility, and dropped it onto the chair. "Okay," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "What do we do first?" "First," Khalid al-Jamil said, guiding her out of the alcove and past the stunned stares of the other diners, "we go and save my brother's legacy, and we find out exactly why my cousin wants to destroy it." Alice felt like she was dreaming. 10 minutes ago, she was worried about clearing plates. Now, she was sliding into the back of a black Mercedes Maybach, so luxurious it felt more like a private jet. The seats were cream-colored leather, and the cabin was as silent as a tomb, sealing off the honking chaos of Manhattan. Khalid al-Jamil sat opposite her, not beside her. He was already on his phone, not speaking, but typing furiously. The car pulled seamlessly into traffic. Alice looked at her reflection in the tinted window, a girl in a waitress uniform sitting in a $200,000 car. My things," she said. Just then, the driver's partition slid down. Sophie, her coat thrown on over her own uniform, was in the front passenger seat. She passed a duffel bag into the back. "You're a legend, Alice," Sophie whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "You're a folk hero. Henderson is having a full-blown meltdown. He keeps muttering about breach of protocol." "Sophie, what are you doing here?" Alice asked. "Mr. Al-Jamil's driver paid me $200 to clear your locker and $300 to go buy you something appropriate for a business meeting," Sophie said, grinning. "Go. Get out of here. Live the dream, girl. Text me everything." The partition slid back up. Khalid hadn't even looked up from his phone. The car glided to a stop outside the Sovereign Tower, a pencil-thin skyscraper on Billionaire's Row. A doorman in a top hat opened Alice's door. "Sovereign Tower, 72nd floor. The penthouse," Khalid said, finally pocketing his phone. "It is my New York residence. We will work from there. It is secure." They bypassed the lobby, taking a private elevator that opened directly into the most breathtaking space Alice had ever seen. It was a duplex penthouse with 20-foot-tall, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a 360-degree view of Central Park and the glittering city lights. The furniture was minimal, modern, and astronomically expensive. Am I staying here?" Alice asked, clutching her duffel bag. "Of course," Khalid said, as if it were obvious. He gestured to a floating glass staircase. "There are 4 guest suites. Pick one. Your driver, the one in the car, is named Ollie. He is my head of security. He will be at your disposal. Sophie will deliver your new clothes. My private chef will make you whatever you wish." He was already walking toward a massive home office. "You have 30 minutes to change. Then we begin." Alice rushed to a guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed, a marble bathroom, and a closet that was mostly empty. She quickly showered, washing away the restaurant grease, and changed into the outfit Sophie had miraculously chosen. A simple, elegant navy blue sheath dress, low black heels, and a string of modest pearls. When she looked in the mirror, the waitress was gone. A professional, a woman who looked like she belonged, stared back. She walked into the office. Khalid was at his desk, a massive piece of dark wood. The room was dominated by a large-scale model of a futuristic building. "The Helios Project," Khalid said, noticing her looking at it. A self-sustaining vertical farm and residential tower. It would feed 50,000 people and be completely carbon neutral. It was Ahmed's masterpiece. He gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have 1 hour before the Tokyo market opens. I need to know what I am facing." He explained the situation. The Helios project required a partnership with a specialized New York real estate trust. Khalid was providing the capital and the technology. The trust was providing the land and the zoning permits. It was a $4 billion deal. "NASA has been my proxy in New York for 6 months, Khalid explained, his voice tight. He has handled all negotiations, all of them. I came this week only to sign the final papers. But for a month, there have been delays, excuses. NASA blamed the partners. He said they were getting greedy. "And you believed him," Alice said softly. "He is my blood," Khalid said, as if that explained everything. "Now, I do not know what to believe." "What do you need from me?" she asked. "The partners. Their primary representative is a man named Tariq Hussein, a very traditional man from Abu Dhabi, but based in New York. He, like me, prefers to negotiate in our own language. NASA was my only bridge to him. Now, I need a new bridge. You." Khalid pressed a button on his console. "I am calling Mr. Hussein's private line. I will put it on speaker. He will think it is just me. I want you to listen. Only listen. Do not speak. I need to know what Nasser has told him." Alice's heart leapt. This was it. The phone rang twice. A deep voice answered in Arabic. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikumus salam, Tariq, Khalid replied, his voice smooth as silk, giving no hint of the drama from an hour before. It is Khalid al-Jamil. I am calling about our meeting tomorrow. There was a pause. Then Tariq Hussein's voice came back, confused and slightly cold. Khalid, a pleasure. But I was under the impression the meeting was off. Your cousin Nasser called not 2 hours ago. He said you were, how did he put it, re-evaluating your position and would be flying back to Dubai tonight. Alice watched Khalid's face. Not a muscle twitched, but his eyes hardened into obsidian. There has been a misunderstanding, Tariq, Khalid said. Nasser was misinformed. I am very much in New York, and I am very much interested in closing this deal tomorrow at 10 a.m., as planned. Another pause, longer this time. Khalid, I must be frank, Tariq said, his voice laced with suspicion. Your cousin has been difficult. For weeks. He has changed terms, he has postponed calls. He told us you were unhappy with the zoning board, that you felt we were not holding up our end. We were told you were insulted. He was poisoning the well, Alice whispered in English. Khalid held up a hand. Tariq, he said in Arabic, what you were told was inaccurate. It was the work of a man who did not have my best interests at heart. I am removing him from the equation. The deal is, and always has been, my top priority. It was my brother's priority. Tariq's tone warmed instantly. Ahmed. Yes, a good man, a visionary. Very well, Khalid. If you say you are coming, we will be there. But who will be translating? Nasser was. Khalid looked directly at Alice. He made a decision. I will be bringing my new advisor, Khalid said. Ms. Alice Hayes. She is one of her kind. We will see you at 10. He hung up. The room was silent. He was not just delaying, Khalid said, his voice a low growl. He was sabotaging. He was making me look like the unreliable partner. He was insulting them. He was trying to make the deal fail. But why? Alice asked. Why would he destroy his own family's deal? There is only one reason, Khalid said, standing and walking to the window, staring down at the city. If I cannot build on that land, someone else will. He turned back to Alice. He is not just a disgruntled relative. He is a traitor. He is working for a competitor. And I think I know who. He looked at Alice, his eyes filled with a new, cold purpose. Your first job was listening. Your next job is to help me set a trap. The rival, Khalid said, pacing his office like a caged panther, must be Marcus Thorne. The name Nasser shouted at the restaurant, Alice recalled. Thorne is a vulture, Khalid said, a corporate raider who specializes in hostile takeovers. He has no interest in sustainable energy. He would buy the land trust, tear down the permits, and build luxury condominiums. He has been trying to get that parcel of land for a decade. He and Nasser, they must have crossed paths. So Nasser sinks your deal, Alice reasoned. The partnership with the trust collapses, their stock plummets, and Marcus Thorne buys them out for pennies on the dollar. Nasser gets a massive payout. And my brother's legacy is turned into a glass box for billionaires, Khalid finished, his voice raw. It is an elegant betrayal, but they do not know that we see them. He stopped pacing and looked at Alice. Nasser does not know that you speak Arabic. He thinks you are a momentary distraction, an American girl I have taken an interest in. He thinks I am angry, but he does not know that I am informed. This is our advantage. What do you want to do? Alice asked. I am going to give him what he wants. I am going to let him think he has won. Khalid picked up his phone. I am going to call Nasser. He is staying at the St. Regis. He is likely in his room, either packing to flee or drinking in celebration. I will put him on speaker. Again, you will listen. He dialed. Alice's heart pounded. This was infinitely more dangerous. It rang 5 times. Finally, Nasser answered, his voice groggy and sullen. What? Khalid sighed, putting on the mask of a frustrated, defeated man. Nasser, cousin. I may have been hasty. There was a silence on the line. Nasser was suspicious. What do you mean? This whole project, Khalid said, rubbing his temples. You were right. It was Ahmed's dream. Not mine. It is too much trouble. These New York partners, they are snakes. Nasser's voice changed, becoming smoother, filled with false sympathy. Khalid, I told you. I tried to protect you from this. This city, it chews up idealists. I am tired, Nasser, Khalid said. I am tired of fighting. You were right to try and warn me. I am pulling out. I'm going home. Alice watched, mesmerized. Khalid was a masterful actor. Nasser could barely contain the note of triumph in his voice. Cousin, it is for the best, truly. Forget this project. We will find others. Where are you? Are you with that waitress? He added the last part with a sneer. She is a silly girl, a distraction, Khalid said dismissively. I am at my apartment. I am booking a flight for tomorrow afternoon. This was the bait. Good, Nasser said quickly. Rest. You've made the right choice. But Khalid, the partners, the trust. We must terminate the agreement formally. There are contracts. You can't just leave. It will be a legal disaster. He's trying to get a signature, Alice whispered. Khalid nodded. You are right, of course. Can you handle it? Handle the termination? Of course, cousin, Nasser said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. That is what I am here for. I will bring the dissolution papers to you. First thing in the morning. Say, 9 a.m.? We will sign them and be free of this mess. Yes, 9 a.m. Thank you, Nasser. I am sorry I doubted you. We are family, Khalid. It is forgotten. Get some sleep. Nasser hung up. Khalid looked at Alice. He will bring papers, and he will likely bring Marcus Thorne, or his lawyer, to witness it. He will want to close the loop, to have proof that I have withdrawn so Thorne can make his move. So what happens at 9 a.m.? Alice asked. At 9 a.m., Khalid said, you will no longer be my translator. Alice felt a chill. What will I be? You will be a waitress again. The next morning, the penthouse was transformed. The lights were dimmed. Khalid, dressed not in a suit but in a simple cashmere sweater and slacks, looked pale and tired, an image he had carefully cultivated after a sleepless night of planning. Alice was in the kitchen when the elevator chimed at 8:55 a.m. Her heart was a trapped bird. She was wearing a simple black and white uniform, identical to the one from the Obsidian, which Ali, the head of security, had procured at 6 a.m. A white apron was tied around her waist. Her hair was pulled back into a simple, severe bun. The elevator doors opened. Nasser al-Jamil walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. But he was not alone. With him was a tall, silver-haired man in a razor-sharp suit, with the cold eyes of a predator. Marcus Thorne, Khalid said, his voice a perfect blend of surprise and resignation. Nasser, what is this? Mr. Thorne is here as a mediator, cousin, Nasser said smoothly. He heard you were pulling out of the Helios deal. He has an interest in the land trust, and he wants to ensure a smooth transition, to make sure there are no legal entanglements. I see, Khalid said. He looked at Thorne. "You move quickly." "It's a small city, Mr. Al-Jamil," Thorne said, his voice a smooth, confident purr. "When one door closes, another opens. I'm just here to make sure it closes cleanly." Alice walked out of the kitchen, holding a silver tray with a coffee service. Nasser saw her and laughed, a short, ugly, barking laugh. "Ah, you kept her. I should have known. You always did have a taste for the help. Does she have a name, cousin, or just an apron?" Khalid glared at him. "That is enough. Her name is Alice." "Alice," Thorne said, looking her up and down with dismissive appraisal. "Pour the man his coffee, Alice. We have business to discuss." Alice's hands were shaking, but she moved to the coffee table. This was her role. The invisible girl. The help. Nasser opened his briefcase and laid out a sheaf of papers. "This is the termination of interest agreement. It dissolves your partnership with the trust, forfeits your deposit, and waives all future claims to the project." Alice's blood ran cold. Forfeits the deposit? That was hundreds of millions of dollars. "It's simple," Nasser said, sliding the papers toward Khalid. "Sign here, here, and here, and we are done. Mr. Thorne has generously agreed to buy out our initial deposit as a gesture of goodwill. For a fraction of the cost, of course." "Of course," Khalid said, picking up the pen. Alice began to pour the coffee. Her hand was steady, her ears were open. Nasser, thinking he was safe, leaned in toward Khalid. He switched to Arabic, his voice low and conspiratorial, meant to exclude Marcus Thorne. "Just sign it, Khalid," he whispered. "Let this be over. This girl, she has made you weak. Look at you. Sign it and let's go home. I've already transferred the payment from Thorne to our Swiss account." "Our Swiss account?" Alice thought. No, he meant his Swiss account, but Khalid didn't sign. He was staring at Nasser. "What did you say?" Nasser's smile faltered. "I said, sign it. It's for the best." "No," Khalid said. "The last part, about the account." Nasser's eyes darted to Alice. She was just a waitress, pouring coffee. He turned back to Khalid. I said I will handle the transfer. From Thorne, it's all arranged." He was lying again. He'd already been paid. "Mr. Al-Jamil," Marcus Thorne said, his patience thinning. "The pen, please." Khalid looked at the papers. He looked at his cousin. He looked at Thorne. And then he looked at Alice. "Ms. Hayes, what did you hear?" The coffee pot rattled in Alice's hand. Nasser's blood drained from his face. What did you call her?" Thorne looked confused. "What is going on?" Alice set the coffee pot down. She stood up straight, untied her apron, and let it fall to the floor. She looked directly at Nasser Al-Jamil, and in flawless, cutting Arabic, she said, "He heard you. You said the money was already transferred. You said our Swiss account. You are a thief and a traitor to your own blood." The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus Thorne looked back and forth between the three of them, his eyes wide with confusion. Nasser was paralyzed. He was speechless. He looked at Alice as if she were a ghost. You, speak!" "She does more than speak, cousin," Khalid said, standing up. He had not signed the papers. "She listens, and she understands." "Khalid, it's a trick!" Nasser shrieked, switching to English. She's working for Thorne." "Am I?" Thorne said, a slow, cold smile spreading on his face. "That's fascinating, but I don't think so. I think, Mr. Nasser, you've just been caught." "How?" Nasser stammered, looking at Khalid. "The restaurant. You thought she was a piece of furniture," Khalid said. "You thought I was a fool. You mistook my grief for weakness, a fatal miscalculation." Khalid walked over to his desk and pressed an intercom. Ali. Send them in. The private elevator doors opened again. This time it wasn't a guest. It was two uniformed NYPD officers and a man in a sharp suit. That, Khalid said, gesturing to the suit, is my actual legal counsel, and those, gesturing to the police, are for him. He pointed at Nasser. On what grounds? Nasser yelled as the officers moved toward him. On the grounds of wire fraud, conspiracy and embezzlement, for a start, Khalid said. You see, Nasser, while you were sleeping, my team was tracing the goodwill payment from Mr. Thorne. It went from a bank in the Caymans to a private account in Zurich. An account in your name. Not our name. Yours. Nasser's face crumpled. The betrayal, the arrogance, all of it dissolved into pure, pathetic fear. As the officers put his hands behind his back, he looked at Alice. You did this. Waitress. Yes, Alice said, her voice shaking but firm. I did. Nasser was led into the elevator. The doors closed. It was just Khalid, Alice, the lawyer, and a very pale Marcus Thorne. Thorne smoothed his suit. Well, this has been dramatic, but it changes nothing. Your partnership is clearly broken. Your deal is dead. Khalid smiled. A real, cold smile. Not quite. You see, Mr. Thorne, the 10 a.m. meeting with the Helios partners, it's not here. It's at their offices. And we are already late. He turned to his lawyer. File the injunction against Mr. Thorne for tortious interference in our contract. And I believe we have enough evidence from Nasser's phone, which he so foolishly left at the restaurant last night, to open a RICO investigation into your little land acquisition practice. Marcus Thorne's predatory smile vanished. He was, for the first time, speechless. Khalid picked up the unsigned termination papers and tore them in half. Alice, he said, holding out his arm, shall we go save my brother's legacy? Alice walked out of the Sovereign Tower and into the waiting Maybach, this time sitting beside Khalid. She was no longer dressed as a waitress or even as an ad hoc consultant. She was wearing a powerful, elegant pantsuit that Ali had procured for her, her hair down, her mind sharp. The meeting with Tariq Hussein and the Helios partners was tense, but brief. Khalid began by doing something Alice had never seen him do. He apologized. I must apologize to you all, he said in Arabic, Alice at his side. I was blind. My grief for my brother allowed a snake into my house. My cousin, Nasser al-Jamil, has been working against me and against you for months. He has been arrested. He then laid out the entire story, with Alice providing precise, clear-eyed details of the deception. She explained the false reports, the postponed meetings, the lies Nasser had told both sides to poison the well. When they were finished, Tariq Hussein sat back. He looked at Khalid and then at Alice. This is a shocking betrayal, Tariq said. But it is also a sign of your own honor, Khalid, that you would come here and admit this. He looked at Alice. And you, Ms. Hayes. Your father was Dr. Richard Hayes? Alice blinked, stunned. Yes, you knew him. He spoke at a conference in Abu Dhabi a decade ago, Tariq said, a warm smile on his face. A brilliant man. He spoke of the poetry of the desert. He said, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. That is the heart of this Helios project. Tariq stood and extended his hand to Khalid. The deal is on. We sign today, in Ahmed's honor, and in Dr. Hayes's honor. The signing was a blur. By 2 p.m., Alice Hayes, who 24 hours earlier had been clearing plates, stood in a high-rise boardroom as a multi-billion-dollar deal was saved, all because she had listened. 2 weeks later, Alice stood in the lobby of the Obsidian. She was not there to work. She was there to meet Sophie for lunch. Gregory Henderson saw her walk in and nearly dropped a tray of champagne flutes. He rushed over, his face a mask of panicked politeness. "Ms. Hayes, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. A table, of course? Right this way." "Actually, Gregory," Alice said, her voice kind but firm, "I'm just waiting for Sophie Chen, and I'm here to give you my 2 weeks' notice, the formal one, though I suppose it's a bit late." No, of course, Miss Hayes, we understand." Sophie emerged from the back, her eyes wide. "Alice, you look amazing." "So do you," Alice said, handing her an envelope. "This is from Mr. Al-Jamil. It's a thank you bonus for your help that night. He said it should be enough for you to, perhaps, open that bakery you were always talking about." Sophie opened the envelope. Her jaw dropped. It was a cashier's check for $50,000. Sophie was speechless. "He's a good man," Alice said. "He values loyalty." Later that evening, Alice was in the penthouse, which she now used as her office. She was coordinating a new team, a real team, to manage the Helios project. Khalid walked in, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "A celebration," he said, handing her one. "NASA has agreed to testify against Marcus Thorne in exchange for a lighter sentence. The entire ring is collapsing. The project is safe." "That's wonderful news, Khalid," Alice said, smiling. "It is," he said, "which means your job is finished." Alice's smile faltered. "Oh, I see. Of course. I'll pack my things." Khalid laughed, a real warm laugh that lit up his eyes. "Alice, your job as my emergency translator is finished. I am offering you a new one, a permanent one." He gestured to the window. "The Helios project is moving forward. But my brother's vision, it was always paired with my father's. A love of history, a love of our shared culture." He reached into his jacket and handed her a blue-bound portfolio. "What is this?" she asked. "The Al-Jamil Foundation is launching a new initiative," he said. "A $500 million fund dedicated to identifying, preserving, and digitizing at-risk archaeological and cultural sites in the Middle East. It will partner with universities and local governments to ensure that heritage is protected for a new generation." Alice opened the portfolio. On the front, in elegant gold lettering, were the words, "The Dr. Richard Hayes Memorial Fund for Cultural Preservation." She looked up, her eyes flooding with tears. "I need someone to run it," Khalid said softly. "Someone who understands the language, the culture, and the history. Someone who understands the poetry. Someone who values legacy above all else." "Khalid, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he said. "Your father's work isn't finished. It's your turn to continue it. You are no longer the invisible observer, Alice. You are the one who sees the truth. I want you to show it to the world." Alice looked from the portfolio to the man in front of her, a man she had met as a rude billionaire, but who had become a friend, a mentor, and a man who had, in 24 hours, given her back the life she thought she had lost forever. She raised her glass. "To legacy," she said. "To legacy," he replied, and they drank. The world is full of people who feel invisible. We are judged by our uniforms, our jobs, or the languages we speak. But this story shows that the most incredible skills can be hidden in the most unexpected places. Alice Hayes wasn't just a waitress. She was a scholar, a guardian of her father's memory, and a woman of incredible courage. Khalid al-Jamil wasn't just a rude billionaire, he was a grieving brother, fighting for his family's legacy. They were two worlds that never should have met. But a shared language and a single act of bravery changed both of their lives forever. It teaches us that you never, ever know who is listening. And sometimes the quiet